Yo, what's good with y'all, man? And welcome to the Ultimate Texture Guide. In this video, I'm gonna be spilling all my sauce on how to make textures and ear candies using guitar pedals and plugins, some of my favorite plugins, how to incorporate melodic and atmospheric texture, and much, much more. This video is gonna have multiple chapters. I'll pop them up on screen right now, or I'm gonna have them on the timeline below. You can skip around to whatever section you wanna watch, but I highly recommend watching the whole video so you don't miss none of my sauce. And don't forget, on the 24th of December, which is in a couple days, I'm dropping a huge free pack. And when I tell you all your favorite producers, this lineup is stacked. So you don't want to miss that, so go check out my Instagram at Pride by Eville. And yeah, without further ado, let's hop right into the video. So first up, what is texture? In my opinion, I think there's two different types of textures. We have melodic texture and atmospheric texture, and it's pretty easy to understand. Melodic texture is made up of tones and follow like notes and scales, whereas atmospheric textures aren't made up of a bunch of notes and scales, but instead they capture ambience and noises to enhance the vibe of your track. And personally, I like to use both types of textures in all my sounds pretty much, and all my beats and my samples. And adding texture can be achieved in many, many different ways, and that's what I'm gonna be exploring in the rest of this video. So how do we actually make textures using plugins? So I'm gonna take you through my whole sound design process and show you a bunch of different tips and tricks in my FL Studio to actually create some insane textures. And I promise you haven't heard a lot of these before, so I'm gonna take you through all of them. So let's jump right into the DAW here. I wanna make this as simple as possible, but also knowledge filled as possible, if that makes sense. So I actually have a whole sound design template that I have for myself. And this just has a lot of different like plugins loaded up and like effects loads and like sends and all different types of stuff. And you don't need all that stuff, but I think this just helps with my workflow. But first thing typically I'm going to do, I'm going to set a BPM, probably, I don't know, let's go for like 93. It doesn't really matter too much because a lot of times it gets changed anyways. And there's two different ways I like to start off. One with like one shots or like just synths or like sounds from like plugins or whatever. Or I like to take like additional textures I already made and then run them through a bunch of plugins to make them sound like completely new, if that makes sense. I'm going to take you through both processes and they're very similar. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make like a pattern, and I have these two sounds pulled up. I have this one synth from my Psycho Acoustics kit, and then I also have this guitar pulled up, and guitars work super well with these. So I usually like to use like plucks, guitars, bells, keys, stuff like that with like, you know, kind of like a harsher attack. And we'll do both instances here. So we'll start with this guitar, and I'll just go F sharp minor, and I'm just going to create like a pattern, like a super simple pattern. And yeah, so I created this little simple pattern here, but what I want to do is go into the guitar settings and just take off like the delay. And now that's off. I don't really want all that delay in there because we're going to add our own. So I just created this guitar pattern right here. And we'll actually make two different patterns just so I can show you guys. I'll do something a little bit different with this one maybe. And this one's a little bit more like fast moving. I'm sure it'll sound super dope with the plugins. So now that we got like some patterns going, and like I said, we're gonna use both of these. Now I'm just gonna run through a bunch of different effects. A bit later in the video, I'm gonna show you guys like all my favorite stuff, but I'm gonna show you like my classic workflow and like my go-to plugins like right now. So basically what I'm gonna do is I have these mixer tracks set up for all these different plugins. But before we even get to any of that, what I like to do, and I think a lot of other sound designers like to do, and I don't think people touch on this a lot. I kind of touch on this in my first texture video, but I like to use plugins like it's a guitar pedal, because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to kind of get that sound. We're trying to get that guitar pedal, like, you know, outboard gear kind of sound and just like crazy sound. And like I said, we're going to use plugins like guitar pedals. So basically what I mean by that is I'm going to go to the master. I'm going to put on the Edison. That's the first thing I do in every single project. I'm just going to click record right now. It's going to start recording literally everything. As you can see, I'm going to play this. It's playing, right? And by doing this, it's going to be easy for us to capture pretty much everything we do when we tweak the plugins and change knobs. And it's almost like recording everything into Edison using a guitar pedal. And it's kind of like that same workflow in my opinion. You know, the first plugin I really like to use, and this is my favorite plugin sound design wise, and it is Lotus. And I have my Eville starter preset up right now, and these presets are available in my Roots multi-kit, my Eville starter, and my Eville texture creator. But I'm just going to start tweaking these sounds. I'm going to let this play out. And as you can see, we already got some like crazy textures, and I'm just gonna go through and record for a long time. What I forgot to do actually is make sure that this is like looping. I'll probably just have it loop like this. I'll just take that second part out. Now I'm just gonna play with a bunch of these knobs with this starter preset that I have, and we're gonna create some crazy sounds with it and mess around with all these knobs. That's hard for like a phrase and like texture kind of thing. And what I like to do is play with these advanced settings as well. And if it isn't obvious already, playing with the sequencing mode at the bottom of this plugin is pretty much like the way you're going to get that like therme sound. So I already like that initial sound. So that all recorded in Edison, and we can export that out and chop it up. But what I really like to do is start combining plugins together. So I'm going to have this play, and what I'm going to do is right click this button at the bottom here and hit route to this track. And now I have it loaded into an auto chroma. And if you aren't aware, auto chroma is like honestly one of my favorite sound design plugins along with Lotus. Probably Lotus and auto chroma my favorite too. And load it into the plugin. There's lots of different stock presets, and I love flipping through these while I'm doing this method. But right now I'm going to use Liwi's new knobs kit. It's not out yet, but he sent it to me, and these are some crazy presets. And I'll just keep clicking through all these presets while everything is getting recorded into Edison. So say I like this preset right here, and we start playing with these knobs. So I really like that, and we can even make a second little pattern here by clicking this 2 button, and we can add even more effects to it. All right, so now that's all recorded in Edison, and what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna do the exact same thing, but with another plugin now. Maybe I'll do trusty old Portal and just find like a, random preset in here. All right, so you pretty much get the idea at this point. It's very simple, and once I'm done and I've recorded everything, I'm gonna hit stop. It's about 5-minute recording, so we can sit through all these 5 minutes and find, some crazy sounds. And really the real reason why I like to capture, everything into Edison is that you never know when you might find like a happy accident, and you never know what might sound cool if you're just sifting through and you're like, oh wow, that sounds really cool, but you might have never got that if you didn't just record everything into Edison. So like I said, we're gonna do the other one too. We're gonna do the guitar pattern, and we'll just do a real simple one for this, and we'll just use Lotus. And that's dope, just like that initial shot right there. And then there we go, we got that recording. It's a little bit shorter obviously, but still like probably like 3 or 4 textures in just that recording right there. All right, so now I got my pattern done, and I got both of these down here. And like I said, we're gonna sift through all of these, some of these, and pick out some sounds that we really think are dope. And what I recommend doing is being experimental with this as well. Pick out some sounds that might not be like really conventional, but sound like super weird and crazy. And then we can even do more processing with that as well. Pretty much my favorite method to go and sift through these sounds is just go into Edison, open it up in Edison, and I'm just gonna go through with this playhead here and find some crazy sounds. So I like this sound right here. And then what I'm gonna do is hit send to playlist as audio clip right here, and it'll create its own unique audio clip so we can individually, mess with that sound without messing with the whole project. So that's what I'll do with all the textures I find in here. So I sifted through all those recordings, and I got about 9 like textures that I think could really work. And pretty much like 5 minutes of work, I really just got 9 textures out of it. And, I'm going to do a little bit more with it, but still, I got like 9 textures out of it. So I'm just going to quickly go through and make a couple just, for time's sake. I'm not going to make all 9 into, textures. So I got these 2 here, one from each recording, and this one sounds like this. And the other one sounds like this. And we're going to turn these into actual like real textures, usable textures. Pretty much what I like to do is, start stretching stuff, pitching stuff differently, chopping stuff up. I just like to have the metronome on at some points and just start like listening to the time. So right there, it already sounds super fire. And maybe we can pitch this a little differently. And there you go. You already got a dope texture. I barely even did anything. Just time stretch it, pitch it a little bit different. And we can even take this up another notch. And this kind of leads me to my second point, or my second technique, is to already take the textures I made, throw them in all different types of plugins. So for instance, we like this texture, and I'm not going to do the entire process over again, but I'm going to take that texture that I already like, and I might like duplicate it so I can save the original file. But I'm going to take that texture I already like and run it through all the same plugins or even different plugins that I did before with the exact same Edison process, and you're gonna create even more crazy textures. So you can turn really one texture into like 5 or 6 textures, and I've done it many of times. And this is how a lot of your favorite sound designers are pushing out a lot of these like crazy projects so fast, because you can turn one texture into something completely different and make it pretty much unrecognizable. So for example, I put this on a mixer track, and maybe I'll run it through, you know, auto chroma again. I might run it through Lotus again. I might run it through illusions. I might run it through fragments. You know, whatever plugins you want to run it through, you can run it through. And what I like to do sometimes too is to just put a like simple delay on it. So for this instance, I might use like delay tape or some, and you can get some crazy sounds out of these delay plugins. So when I know a texture is finished, I'm going to highlight it like this and hit Control-Alt-C just to consolidate it. And I'm going to hit save tempo information as long as it's already tempo synced. And this makes it so people can drag and drop your textures, or you can drag and drop these textures and they're already going to be synced to your tempo. And this is the first one we came up with. So now for the second, we're going to do a similar process again. And there you go. We already got this shit time stretched. And I might, you know, pitch it again. So maybe up 5. And there we go. We got a texture already. And I like changing these stretch modes too, because maybe like super fast might sound cool. And I can see that being usable as well. Maybe even 2 times. That could be cool as well. And you know, I'll repeat the process like I did before. I might run it through some more plugins, do the Edison trick, and do all that kind of stuff. So as you can see, it's really simple, but a lot of people, I feel like, don't really understand that like recording everything in, and it's a little tedious. Like, I'm not gonna lie, it's a little tedious, but recording everything into Edison and running through all different types of plugins, you don't need guitar pedals. You can just use the Edison and those plugins as guitar pedals, if that makes sense. And so yeah, that's pretty much it for this section. And I think this is the most sauce, honestly, in a section, but we're gonna expand these techniques even more with the later sections as well. And yes, hop on to the next section then. If you have a guitar pedal or are thinking of getting guitar pedals and you're interested in how to make textures using those guitar pedals, because it really is a little bit daunting at first, but once you get a hang of it, it makes workflow very, very fun. And a question I get a lot is, how do I actually hook up my guitar pedals? So I have the Focusrite 18i8 and I have 2 guitar pedals currently. Pretty much how I connect these is I have a 1/4 inch guitar cable, and I have it plugged into output 1 on my interface, and I have that routed to the input of my guitar pedal. And then from my pedal, I have another 1/4 inch guitar cable, and that's running from the output of the guitar pedal into the input of my interface. And in this instance, I have it in the front of my interface where I can control the volume and stuff. And it's actually plugged into input 2. And then from there, you're going to want to go into whatever software you have for your interface. You might have to tweak around some settings. If you guys have any questions about that, go hit me up on Instagram. I might be able to answer some, but there's tons of videos on YouTube. And if you Google kind of what problems you have, you might be able to find some. But if you need me to answer any questions, just hit me up on Instagram. I'll probably be able to answer some questions or help you out with troubleshooting and stuff. And then now let's actually hop into how I make textures using my guitar pedals. So first of all, over at the DAW, I got this pattern going around about 6 minutes, and I'm just going to record my stuff directly into this playlist here. And basically, this is what I have right now. And I have this sound routed to 124, which is my pedal out right here. And then like I said before, in the DAW, I got to change this to output 3 or 4, whatever output you're at. And then I input it into another mixer track right here. This is input 2, and this is where it's actually recording from. So I hit this record button, and then I hit this record button at the top here and make sure it's on audio. And then at this point, we can just start playing the melody. And then all I gotta do is hit the bypass. Let's make sure we're in the right BPM. And then we can just start playing with the knobs. And it's very similar to the plugin technique that I showed earlier. We just want to record everything in, make sure this is just looping the whole time through, and we're just gonna record everything and record those happy accidents. So I'll just play around with the thermate here. If you're not sure what everything does, I'm not really going to explain, but we're just gonna mess around with these knobs here. I just like to do whatever and then just capture everything so I can sample it. I'll just keep recording everything in. Really, the 2 knobs that I play with the most are these 2 right here, and then I'll play with these switches. And then another cool thing you can do is hold down these 2 buttons, and then when this turns green, we're just gonna click this again, and it kind of like half times it all. And we might play with the feedback up here a little bit, maybe add a little bit of glide. And then obviously we have the dip switches on top that we can play with, but I'm not going to do it right now. So now we got this recording right here. And at this point, it's really just the same exact process as I do before. I'll just normalize everything and then go through in Edison. And as you guys can hear, I got a lot of noise coming out of my pedals, and my favorite plugin to kind of get rid of that noise is this RX11 spectral denoise here, and it really just helps with getting rid of some of that noise. And yeah, it's pretty much just a little basic guide on how I use my pedals, and I'll just use it the exact same way I'd use, you know, the plugins and stuff, the same exact workflow. And yeah, it's a really, really good method, and I use it for a lot of my sound design. So welcome to chapter 4, and this is a really like dope chapter. I think this is going to be really useful for a lot of you guys. And this is actually using textured one-shots and, you know, using multi-keys as well. So I'm gonna waste no time and just show you guys exactly what I'm talking about. So I'll show you guys how to design textured one-shots and also how to use them. So for example, in my new Psychoacoustics pack, I have all different types of synth shots, and a lot of these are like super textured. For example, that one right there. So as you can see, a lot of these are textured, and a lot of your favorite producers that are putting out like one-shot packs and stuff, they have a lot of textured one-shots in there as well. And that's a really dope way to add texture into your samples. All right, so I got this textured one-shot right here from Psychoacoustics. And when I mean this is a super simple way to add texture, it is super simple. All you got to do is just make like a pattern or chord progression or whatever, and you're already going to have built-in texture by just using these texture one-shots. All right, so I dragged in this MIDI from Vagustro's Cyclery kit, and as you can see, by just using those texture one-shots, it's going to create a textured like chord progression. As you can see, super textured, and we can take this up a even crazier notch. And this is by using multi-keys, and pretty much what multi-keys is, you know, a Pigments preset. And you can do this with a lot of different other plugins too as well, but I like to use Pigments. And it's basically just round robin one-shots all together. I'm gonna show you guys right now. So if you have Pigments, what I like to do is go here and go to new preset. I'm gonna change this to sample mode. I'm gonna start dragging in like textured one-shots. All right, so I got a mix of like textured one-shots and like some more cleaner sounding one-shots. And the best way to go and do this is click the map mode here and just click round robin. And now I'm just gonna play a chord or just something, and it's gonna sound crazy. As you see, every note I play is playing a different like one shot. This is super crazy for making melodies, I'm not gonna lie. And as you can see, when I play this melody now, it's gonna sound super textured without me even doing anything. It's just using the one shots. I don't even have to drag in any textures. I don't gotta do anything crazy with plugins. It's just using Pigments, using round robin notes and texture one shots, and it's gonna combine all of them together and make some crazy texture samples. And it sounds like this with just the chord progression now. And the way I kind of like to make these texture one-shots is kind of the same process I do with making the actual like textures themselves. So for example, I got this cleaner kind of sound here. Still kind of texture, but kind of like that tape noise and stuff, but we're gonna add some more like melodic texture to it. I think Portal's a really good like way to add texture. So for example, we'll just grab like the stereo grain preset from Leewee's Knobs. There you go, we already got some texture in there. That's a little much, but maybe turn this mix down. That's super fire right there. Pretty much the exact same thing I did with chapter 2 of this video, actually making textures, but just with one shots instead. But you definitely don't want to make it too crazy or it's not really not going to be usable. Just like subtle texture, and especially combining that with the multi-keys and Pigments, you're going to be able to do some crazy stuff with that. Don't be afraid to use like some more tape plugins, distortions, delays, stuff like that. It's not really too melodic, but just add some more like atmospheric texture in there, which is actually leads me to my next section. And we'll jump over there right now. Yo, if you're liking the textures and sounds in this video, then you're definitely going to love my new Psychoacoustics multi-kit. It has tons of different textures, phrases, mixer presets to help with your own design. And also I have some crazy texture one-shots in there that are super good for multi-keys or just using in your own samples. You can go purchase that right now on my store, and it comes with about 250 files and sounds. So you're gonna be stocked up on sounds for days, and the mixer presets and the design assets in there are super good for making your own textures. I also have pedal recordings in there, so if you don't have pedals, you can kind of just go through the pedal recordings. They're about like like 3-4 minutes long, and you can chop those up and make your own textures completely royalty free. So I just had to plug that real quick, but let's hop right back into the video. So we went through all the melodic stuff, but atmospheric texture I feel like is a super easy, simple way to add, texture and a little bit more like atmosphere to your samples. And these can be achieved extremely easy. This is the easiest method in my opinion. Atmospheric texture can be really whatever you want it to be. It could be birds chirping, it could be, a Tascam noise, it could be cassette noise, it could be, anything you want it to be. And there's really two simple ways to, incorporate these into your samples or beats. The first thing, of course, is going to other producers' packs. Such as my packs, I got a bunch of different atmospheric textures in there, super easy drag and drop. I have some recorded for my Tascam noise, my pedal noise, and just regular atmospheric stuff like birds and nature outside. And that leads me to like, how do I actually make these atmospheres? And it's super simple. I really just go outside and I hit record on my voice memos app on my iPhone, and I just record all different types of stuff. Say I'm on like a main street or something, I might just hit record and capture all that atmosphere in there. Or say you're like outside in like a forest or like, in a park or something, you want to capture that like nature ambience. Just hit record on your voice memos and you can capture all that and then throw it into your DAW, and you got some crazy textures and atmospheres in there. And this is the easiest way to actually add some more depth to your track, and I pretty much highly recommend this. I do this for pretty much all my samples, and yeah, it's a super easy way to make texture and atmosphere. And yeah, you can go try it out yourself too. It's super simple to do. All right, so chapter 6, this is a pretty vital chapter in my opinion, because this is actually how to incorporate textures and, whether that be melodic or atmospheric, into your actual samples. All right, so I got this sample right here, and it is utilizing pretty much every technique I've talked about in this video so far. I already broke this down on the channel, and you can click on the link. I don't know, I'll put like a card up somewhere. You can click on the video to see the breakdown of the actual sample itself. But I really want to talk about how I really use texture in a more in-depth way. So this is what the sample sounds like. As you can tell, lots of texture, a lot of atmosphere, and it's pretty much the epitome of what this video is about. Pretty much this whole sample is made with psychoacoustics, so if you want to check that out, go check it out. And I use these textured one shots obviously, but we already talked about that. But I want to talk about how to incorporate the actual like textures you might make or might find in other people's kits. And first I want to touch on the actual melodic elements of this. So if you want to hear the actual melodic elements, this is what they sound like. Pretty much my process for this is opening up a kit or your stash of textures that you made, and I'll just go and I won't really care about the key so much. I'll pitch all that to make sure it's all correct. And I like to use sounds that are already time stretched, and it's really easy, just drag and drop if it's already time stretched. So I know the key that we're in is A sharp minor, so I'll go through and I'll just drag in some sounds. So I get the C sharp minor sound right here, and I think it could sound cool. So first I'm going to pitch it to the right key, put it on a mixer track probably, and I'm just going to make sure it sounds cool, and I'll just play it with, just my regular things. So I kind of like the sound at the 1 right here. It sounds really cool. Already sounds cool, but I really like to manipulate the actual sounds itself. You don't have to just drag and drop and just keep them there. So maybe this could sound cool if it was like sped up and maybe even put at a different spot. I mean, that kind of sounds cool like that. And that sounds super dope. So, speed it up, slow it down. You can even do like maybe, I don't know, slow it down like this. It wouldn't be too crazy, but. All right, that sounds a little bit too crazy. I kind of like that sped up version. And as you kind of hear this out, you might hear little other pockets in there. So then I'll start dragging in a little bit more textures. But not to get too ahead of myself, I'm already feeling like this is a little bit dry and I kind of want some delay on here. So that's exactly what you can do. So maybe put like a little bit of reverb on here. I might put a little bit of delay, maybe some echo boy, like really subtle delay, maybe turn the mix down a little bit, and then, you got this now. And there you go. So you can really manipulate the sound however you want. You could put halftime on it, which I love to do with a lot of my like more phrase kind of sounds. So for example, this guitar phrase right here, without the effects on, this is actually what it sounds like. And then with all the effects on, it sounds like this. So as you can tell, I pitched it up an octave and, you know, I put a halftime on. Like, you can manipulate the sound however you want to do. So just drag and drop, kind of hear the pockets out and just start manipulating the sound. So for example, this one right here, I just chopped it up a little bit. This is what it would have been. But I thought it sounded better just chopped up. And especially this one over here, I kind of chopped it up. So yeah, really chop up your sounds, chop up the melodic textures, put effects on them. Or you can really just drag and drop them, kind of keep them like that as well. They also sound good just like that. And this applies to all different types of kits and, you know, different sounds and stuff. And I already talked about atmospheric texture. It kind of encapsulates those noises and to make more depth into your samples. So for example, I have this atmosphere from the kit, and I also have these percussion phrases, which also I feel like contribute to the atmosphere a lot. And it sounds like this. You know, dragging these atmospheres, this is just like a regular like sound outside, I think. And I feel like it adds so much to the sample. It makes it sound a little bit more cohesive. And for the atmospheric stuff, I kind of just drag them in and, you know, I might chop them up a little bit, might chop up the percussion a little bit, but it's really just a really easy way to, you know, add texture to your samples. All right, so welcome to chapter 7, and this is pitch changing and also adding like half times and time stretching and all of that kind of stuff. So I got this sample right here. And it's already kind of textured, but I feel like we can make it even more textured, more vintage kind of sounding. So what I might do is if I already have a sample fully laid out, I might hit Control-A and consolidate it all. So then it's kind of easier to time stretch and BPM change. And now we can really manipulate this kind of sound to get a little bit more like textured. So what I might do is I might, you know, add it to a mixer track. And one super cool way to add texture is using Sound Shifter. Using Sound Shifter, I might pitch it up by 12. And what you can also do is add another Sound Shifter on and then pitch it down by 12, and it kind of cancels it out. But Sound Shifter adds like these weird textures on, and it's very kind of subtle, but super cool. That's with it on, this is without it. I'll flip through now. So there you go. Like just doing that right there already adds some more like texture onto the sample. And then, you know, I might like actually change the pitch in general, and this will introduce even more textures in by like pitching up your whole samples. So I pitch it up by 2, and this is what it sounds like now. So if I want to change the BPM now, I might go here and click stretch. And by clicking the stretch mode, when I change the BPM now, change the actual length of the sample. So maybe I'll put it down to like 129. So like a whole 10 BPM change. And this again is going to add even more texture. And by just doing those 3 things right there, it just transformed the sample and just added more texture in there, more atmospheric kind of texture, and without even having to drag and drop anything. It's just using the actual sample itself and using the tools inside your DAW. And yeah, it's a super simple way to add texture, and let's hop on to the next section. All right, now on to the last section of the video, and this is my go-to plugins, some of my favorite plugins I use for sound design, adding texture, or whatever. I'm gonna try to go through this pretty fast. I'm not gonna show you what everything does, and you can look up videos yourself on, you know, what these plugins do. I'm just gonna kind of list them off, and you can go check them out for yourself. So first off, we obviously have Lotus. This is probably my favorite plugin to sound design. It is just emulation of a Thermate, but it's the best plugin that does it. I don't think it's available anymore, unfortunately, but they have a new plugin. I don't think it's available anymore. So they have this new plugin called Illusions out, and it's pretty much the same thing. I don't think it's as good as Lotus, but pretty much does the same thing. Next up, we got a stock plugin here, and this is Vocodex, and this will change your sound. It's super cool just to make and like change sounds to sound like weird stuff, to be honest. And they have a bunch of dope presets in here that you can kind of click through while you're making your textures, and it'll kind of just change the sound. Super dope. Next up, we got trusty old halftime, and this is self-explanatory. Throw halftime on it, it'll stretch out the sound, add some textures in there, and you can do a lot of cool stuff with automation and changing like these band modes and like the smoothing mode, and you can do a lot of cool stuff with that. Of course, we got sound shifter, and this is self-explanatory. And then we got auto key, key, and this is an underrated plugin. I don't really see a lot of people using this, and this is to make sure that key your textures in. This is like one of my favorite plugins for sound design, because I might make a texture like we did earlier in the video, and you know, you might not know what key you're in after all that pitch changing and stuff. So, you know, having auto key or a key plugin like this to really find out your key of your texture is just a really good workflow hack, and I recommend this one a lot. Next up, we got this one that I don't really see a lot of people using. This is Spec Ops by Unfiltered Audio, and really dope plugin. I love going through these presets and clicking through to find some crazy ass sounds, and you can change a lot of these knobs here and you're gonna get some crazy sounds out of this, I promise you. Then we got Auto Chroma, and I'm gonna start rapid fire through these because a lot of these you guys might already know. We got Auto Chroma here, go-to plugin as well. Next up, we got Fragments, and again, really crazy for adding texture, and I recommend using this by using that Edison trick that I showed you guys earlier, because you're gonna get some like really like weird sounds out of this, and you can play with a lot of these knobs and create your own presets, which I think is really cool as well. Next up, we got Digitalis, and this will add a crazy amount of weird texture, more atmospheric kind of texture into your sounds, and I recommend this a lot. Next up, we got Effect Rack, and these presets in here are actually like top tier, I can't even lie, and I use these a lot. Next up, we got a free plugin here, and this is actually Emergence, and I don't know how to use it. Just tweak the knobs and you're gonna come up with weird stuff. And the last plugins I recommend, I actually don't have, but I really want to pick up or work with him possibly in the future, and it is Hayes's pedal series, and he has all different types of pedal plugins here. They're pretty cheap, $39 for all these plugins here, and $200 for the pedal series. From what I've seen, the step shifter is kind of like the Therme pedal, and the loop box is pretty much the blooper. So those are two pedals I have, and I really would like to try these out. But I think you can experiment with all these, really. I'm sure you can create some crazy texture with them. I've seen people use them, and not a lot of people know about it, I don't think. But yeah, you're gonna be able to create some insane stuff out of these. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you're watching this right now, that's crazy, because this video is probably pretty long, and I really appreciate you guys staying to the end and watching this. And I really hope you guys, you know, took something away from this. I get questions all the time on how I make textures or how do I add textures and all different types of questions. And I wanted to make a one-stop shop video where you can kind of check in here and, you know, take my processes, get some really dope plugins, kind of, you know, just get a lot of sauce that comes with textures. I feel like there's not a lot of really good videos out there and how to incorporate this stuff, and this is really like a great way to add more atmosphere, depth, you know, whatever you want in your samples, and pretty much all your favorite producers are doing it. And if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely like the video, and I want you guys to type in the comments like what was your favorite part, or what did you really learn in this video. I would love to know what you guys are thinking. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I have another video right here where I think you guys are gonna love, that has some textures in there, and I'll catch you on the next one.